Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. I'm back. I'm your host, Dylan Bird, alongside my co host, Ryan Winthrop, and we are here to preview the season 41 finale, Survivor 41. Pretty crazy that we're already here. It feels like, not that long ago that we were just, waiting through the offseason, that long extended offseason for the season to finally get here. And now we're already at the season 41 finale. So I'm excited, Ryan.
Dylan, happy finale week. Glad to have you back. I'm looking forward to Wednesday, and we're gonna have like 2-3 hours of Survivor to cover on Wednesday. So I'm really looking forward to the next few days.
Yeah, for sure. Look, there's a lot we got to talk about, especially because I obviously was not there to recap on Wednesday. I have a lot of thoughts, and based on what I heard from the podcast that you recapped on Wednesday, we have some differing thoughts. So excited to get into that. Now, before we get started here, just wanted to remind everyone to be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Soul Survivor Pod, and also be sure to subscribe to this podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else you may listen. Links in the description below. Leave any comments you have, prediction comments you have in the comments below. And yeah, I'm excited to get through this quick preview. Should be around a 30-minute podcast or so, just going over, what we think could happen. Anything, along the lines of that. So, I'm excited to get into it.
Listen, I told you off before we hopped on the podcast that I gave a lot of my thoughts last week for episode 12. I gave a lot of my perspective on the episode, but then I also gave a lot of perspective on the upcoming finale. So I've already told Dylan, like, if he wants to, give his quick thoughts on the previous episode or what does he think is going to happen in the finale, he can go wherever he wants with it. And then I'll kind of respond, since you all that listened to the last one heard me talk to myself for 45 minutes. So in any direction Dylan wants to go, we will explore together.
Yeah, so I guess I will start off with just a couple of thoughts that I had on the episode, since I didn't get to have those on Wednesday. I was a little bit disappointed in the episode, personally, I think, because obviously if you've been listening to these podcasts throughout the season, you know that I was a huge Danny fan throughout the season. I was kind of hoping there was some way, especially after the episode the week before, that he could kind of backdoor his way into maybe getting to the finale, getting to maybe the final three. Especially after, again, that great episode he had. But it just seemed like they were, just seemed like, I guess, building up another threat just to be voted out. So, I was a little bit disappointed, especially because it was a little bit of an anticlimactic penultimate episode. I know you described it, Ryan, as more of a classic, Survivor episode, which it was, and I don't mind that at all. Obviously, early in the season, we were complaining, wish we had more classic Survivor episodes. It was just, more personally disappointed that Danny went home, of course. And I think, it sets up for a little bit of an interesting finale, but I think that for me, the way I saw it in the moment when I was watching it, I was saying to myself, this is setting up perfectly for a Ricard win, even though it may look obvious. And I saw a lot of people, including you, Ryan, who were like, who didn't get that vibe. So this is why, this is why we podcast. This is why other people podcast. This is why I listen to other podcasts. This is why you probably listen to other podcasts, to get all these different perspectives on what happened in the episode. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, wow, this could be an obvious Ricard win. And I, turn on our podcast, listen to Ryan, and Ryan's like, well, I think that this could be a Deshaun win. And then I'm kind of looking at other podcasts and they're like, well, obviously Ricard may be the favorite, but I could see it being a Deshaun win also. So I thought it was completely interesting to hear that perspective, because I'm sitting here thinking, well, this seems to me like a Mike Holloway type edit where he just wins out a bunch of times in a row and then has a good enough resume to the point where he's going to win at the end. That's kind of the vibe I get from Ricard right now. Will that happen? I don't know. But am I sticking with Ricard to win? Probably yes at the moment. But I think it was interesting to hear all these other takes that didn't exactly think, that kind of think that anyone could win. So, that's kind of where I'm at after that episode. Obviously we'll get more into this, but yeah, Ryan, do you want to reiterate what you were thinking and how it differentiated from my opinion?
Yeah, so basically, I do see your point. I mean, just to concede that first, that, Ricard has won 3 immunities. I guess if you were to look at like a leaderboard of all-time immunity wins in a season, you have people like Ozzy and Mike Holloway that have won, 5. Then you have people like Kelly Wigglesworth and Kim Spradlin who have won 4. And so you have like a tie for first, tie for second, and then Ricard's kind of like in a tie for third with a bunch of people who have won 3 this season. So Ricard's obviously a great challenge competitor. He's good at the endurance. He's good at the physical. He's great at puzzles. So Ricard is obviously a big threat. And I could easily see Ricard winning the season. I said last week on the podcast when you weren't there, Dylan, I still think the winner of the season will be either Ricard or Deshaun. I think it's going to come down to one of those two for sure. But the reason why I feel like it's going to be Deshaun and Ricard might come up just short, I'm getting more of a final boss vibe from Ricard than a Mike Holloway winner vibe. And what I mean by that is he's getting like a David Wright or Rick Devens edit where ever since like the end point of we were getting to the end of the merge, every episode is now becoming about, okay, Ricard has to go. If he doesn't win, he goes tonight. Oh, how do we get rid of Ricard? And he either wins and secures the safety, or in the case of last week where they voted out Liana, he skated by because that new 4-person alliance took out Liana to weaken Danny and Deshaun. So yeah, I feel like every episode is about Ricard being voted out and he doesn't get it voted out. That's almost like the David or Rick where every week they get by, and at the last second at the finale, they lose. And I think that's what the winner, maybe Deshaun, has to slay him in order to get over that last step to win. So that's why I think Ricard's not going to win.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point. I think a lot of people are concerned about, the fact that Ricard has been on the chopping block and that if he does lose immunity, he's likely gone. Now, what I would say to this is that I think that, one, he won't lose immunity. But if he does lose immunity, I want to point out, an aspect of last episode that I believe is being overlooked. And that is Danny walking past an advantage on the floor that he did not find. I was kind of hidden in a bush. Now, I know that they're going to a different islands for the finale, kind of like an Island of the Idols type thing. But I think that it's safe to assume that for the final 5, they will re-hide that advantage. I'm pretty, especially the way the season has gone with the advantages, kind of all over the place. And, now there's been like no advantages played, which is the ironic part of all this. I would be very surprised if that advantage, we don't know, it could be an idol to get somebody through to final 4. I don't know if it would be an idol simply because, Xander already obviously has an idol. So I don't know if they would give 2 idols that have to be used at final 5. If we remember in season 39, Dean gets an idol nullifier. It plays a huge role. I don't know if that's something that would happen in this season, considering everybody knows where the idols are. I really hope that it's not. I think, it'll be interesting to see what that advantage could be. Maybe it's one of those things where Ricard or whoever finds it, and I don't know why. Ricard may not find it. I'm just saying that based on the person that's playing the best game, let's just say Ricard does find it. I could see that whoever finds it getting a head start in a challenge, maybe in an immunity challenge, which you've seen this late in the game before, I believe. So I think that advantage could come into play again. And I would give Ricard the best chance to find it, even though it seems like he hasn't found an advantage yet this year. But I think that, final 5, all hands on deck, it could be the time that, he goes and finds it. So I think that that's being a little discounted when people are, talking about, that they think Ricard could end up, falling here. But again, it could happen. We don't know. I'm still keeping Ricard as my heavy favorite though, but that's kind of what I think is being a little bit discounted. I do see another advantage coming into play at final 5 that we do not know yet.
Okay, so you're more in the camp of it's going to be an advantage rather than an idol. I mean, yeah, we know for a fact that idols can only be played up until the final 5. So yes, they could introduce one more idol because if that was the one that Danny should have found this past week, then it makes sense that they would introduce one more because when Shan left with hers, the idol should go back into the game. So I still think it's going to be an idol personally. And then that would mean then if someone finds that, we're going to have not like advantage again, but we could have like a lot of things at the final 5 because someone's going to win immunity. Let's just say it's Ricard again. And then Xander has his idol, which he's going to play no matter what because it's the last night to use it. And then let's just say Deshaun or Erica finds that idol, then you're going to have 3 people safe and you can only vote for 1 or 2 people. So I think it could be an idol. If it's an advantage, I could see it being maybe what you were saying in terms of something to help someone advance their game at the end, which I wouldn't be like a huge fan of, but it wouldn't be the worst thing. The worst thing would be, like you mentioned, and I don't know Nullifier. They're not going to do it, but if they did, that would really hurt the season. Like the season is already, in my opinion, and we can talk about this in the offseason, it's for me so far, depending on how it ends, we could be looking at like a mid-tier season, like somewhere in the ballpark of like, I don't know, 19 to 24, somewhere in the middle. Obviously, it can go up or down based on the finale. But if they somehow brought back an Idol Nullifier, which really screwed over Janet, like that would just be major points deduction in my eyes. So I hope it's just a regular Idol.
Yeah. And I kind of want to talk about, like, you know how like in the finale, they always go through at the beginning when they intro it, they go through like everybody's game and their path to get to the finale. That's something that I kind of would want to go through, for us, go through each player, talk about their chances to win in our eyes, what maybe their resume is looking like. So I guess we could start at Ricard because I see him to be the favorite, and then we could go to Deshaun, who you see to be the favorite here, or at least you think that he could end up winning this season at the end. All right, so we could start with Ricard. Obviously, from the beginning, he's on the tribe that gets whittled down all the way to 2 with Shan. He plays a brilliant social game up, through kind of uses Shan as a shield, make sure he has the relationships, with Shan to stay in, but at the same time also, make sure he hides behind her, make sure that, he is not the one who looks like the one who is making all these moves, even though he clearly has a say. Obviously a former flight attendant. Flight attendants have historic, or I should say current flight attendant. Flight attendants have always done well on the show, because of their ability to read people. He also says that he is deaf in one ear, which, leads him to be able to read body language better. And I think that's definitely a strength for him in this game. And I think Ricard has not only played a brilliant, he's, kind of been he's hit all 3 pillars. He's out, he's done it all. He's strategically been great. He's socially been great. And, he's been a challenge beast. So Ricard kind of has it all. I think we could all agree that if Ricard is sitting at the final 3, he's going to win the game. Yeah. And I mean, his resume, it hasn't exactly been the most flashy in terms of, advantage plays, idle plays, getting someone out like that. But he's completely controlled this post-merge, basically from the point where he decided he was always in the majority alliance, whether it was that, strong 5 that he was the 5th member of, and then quickly turns it on Shan to take control of the game. Obviously the blindside of Shan, his signature move. And basically, like Xander said that one time, that was really the biggest move and maybe one of the only big moves of the game so far. So, he's sitting there with the biggest move of the game on his resume, several challenge wins, and a great social game. A lot of people realizing that he's the big threat, on the jury, that he's the person controlling it. So I think that is Ricard's resume right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty well summed up. I mean, Ricard is the clear front runner. If he gets there, he does win, I think. And obviously, you put aside what happened pre-merge, because I think we've heard from many former players what happens in the pre-merge really doesn't count. Honestly, like what happens in the merge afterwards is really what the jury looks at, because that's when the jury starts. Like no one's going to be looking at all the work that Shan and Ricard did to survive UA, but then to be fair, Shan is on the jury, so if Ricard gets there, Shan will acknowledge all that he did to survive at UA. But Ricard, I think in terms of all facets of the game, he's been amazing at challenges, so he gets that in his belt. Socially, yes, maybe Shan had to maybe help him navigate some of the stuff at UA in the pre-merge, but I think ever since the merge, he's done well to position himself. He's always been, like you said, in the majority alliance, and he only started to get like looks around when Shan left. Now, you can make the argument, did he take out Shan 1 week too soon, because then he became the new main target? And I think that's tough because he takes out Shan at final 8, where you have the 4-person alliance of the Deshaun, Danny, Liana, Shan alliance on the left, and then the others on the right. I guess the problem is if he waited 1 more week, then he's really given them the numbers, and if they stuck true, he couldn't have swung anybody. So I think he had to make it at final 8, and then at that point you have to just try to win out or try to convince people to go with you to the end. And I think he's done a good job of that so far. I mean, Xander, we'll go over Xander later, but Xander says he's been keeping Ricard as a shield. But if Ricard wins out, he may have kept him 1 week too soon when they had a clear shot at him when Liana left and they didn't take it, and that might come back to bite them. So I do agree with all your points that Ricard, if he gets there, no matter who he sits next to, he will win. My only one fear, as I've said before, is I just don't know if he gets there. If he loses again, because he only has 2 more challenges to win. He has to win Final 5 and Final 4, or if he loses that final 4, he has to win fire. If he wins both of those, he's got the game locked up. If he loses one of those, they've got to take him out at that point. So if he has the hardest road to get to the end now, he has the hardest road, but if he gets there, he'll win. Like that's the dichotomy there.
Right. And now, I pretty much think you hit it spot on. And now we could go over to Deshaun, who has played way more of a social game. But I think at the same time, he's been in a lot of strategic moves. Obviously he was in that majority alliance post-merge. He was in the dominant tribe. Pre-merge where they didn't lose any challenges. So we didn't really see him, much pre-merge, but obviously made strong bonds there. Now, post-merge, he, creates a strong alliance. I think what's going to help Deshaun the most is that he has the bonds that if he gets there with anyone not named Ricard, those social bonds will bring him through to winning this game. And I think that he could kind of pitch, we kind of already see him, pleading to the jury that like, I had to blindside Shan because, I had this huge moral dilemma, and I could see that this is going to be a huge talking point if he does get to the final 3, why he made all the moves he did, why he blindsided Shan, stuff like that. I think, you can't specifically point to like a ton of moves that he made, quote unquote, but he was always he was always on the right side of the move, and he always on the right side of the vote pretty much until like the last 2. And then at the same time, he has a great social game. He does have those bonds on the jury. I think that, outside of, probably Ricard, like his social game has probably been the best right now. And I don't think that could be disputed. And then at the same time, I think that Deshaun may have a pretty tough path to getting to the final 3 from here on out. Just given the fact that it looks like, he may have, ruffled some feathers at the last tribal council with his truth bomb. People may be looking to get him out. Erica seems like she has no patience for him anymore. She wants to get him out. I think a lot of people see Deshaun as a big threat as well because of the bonds he makes on the jury. So if he does go on some kind of immunity run, we haven't seen him win immunity yet, but assuming that stuff's going to happen, for him to get to that final 3, if he were to win fire, if he were to win a challenge to get, to the final tribal council, that would only bolster his resume. And I ultimately think that, like if he were to, maybe go against a Ricard and fire, like him taking down Ricard would be a major, whoever takes down Ricard, that's going to be a major point on their resume. And that's something that we haven't, seen yet. But ultimately what we could look at right now for Deshaun is, basically up until the last, 2 votes where he's been on the bottom, he pretty much controlled most of this post-merge from the top and created all those social bonds. And despite being on the bottom, if he, could win a couple challenges and get there, it would be a pretty solid game for him.
Yeah, again, I mentioned this on Wednesday. I don't know what Deshaun was thinking with that truth bomb right before the vote there. I think we've learned from the Survivor that in the modern era, the whispering or the little like scrambling a tribal, it rarely changes anything. Most times people will just stick with the plan that they had when they left camp, because it's at that point, it's too late to not only make a new move, but for everyone to like think logically about it if it makes sense for them. So if he was going to drop that, he should have done it right before camp, before they left for tribal. So yeah, I don't know what he was thinking. I think that was a bad move on his part. I guess I'll start with the bad from Deshaun and then I'll get to the good. I also feel like, it's no coincidence that Deshaun and Danny try to make this move against Ricard and keep Shan out of it. And then that directly leads to Shan, Liana, and Danny going out back to back to back. I think they made the move on Shan just a week too soon. Honestly, I think they should have waited for Final 7. Final 7 is a really good point to change the narrative because it's an odd number of people, not counting extra votes and all that stuff. But I think that's when they should have done it. And we hear from post-game interviews, and I know people always debate like, oh, are post-game interviews canon? Should we believe them? But if we are to believe like the narrative, because that kind of fills in some puzzle pieces, Dylan, it sounds like Danny and Deshaun wanted to make the move against Ricard and keep Shan out of it. But it sounds like Danny still told Shan, and I guess Shan was okay with doing it. But then when Liana went to Shan and told her that, oh, they wanted to leave you out of it, that's what really just set in motion this whole problem. So I do think that Danny and Deshaun made a big blunder at that point. Now, moving past that, the reason why I think Deshaun is going to win, other than maybe, slaying the dragon that is Ricard, is just because I do think he's had a really good social game, as you mentioned. One of my favorite lines of all Survivor is from Coach in South Pacific, Dylan, where he wins that challenge where you need to flip over tiles. And he says, the moves you make early on will dictate your success later. So in that game, if you make the right moves with your tiles, you're going to win with the most property at the end. And Deshaun made the moves early to dictate his success. He made bonds with Erica and Heather. We saw countless times in the episode and also in post-game interviews that Deshaun was a lot closer with Erica and Heather than Danny was. And that's maybe one of the biggest reasons why Deshaun stayed last night, even with this truth bomb, because Erica thinks Deshaun will take me to the end and I don't have that same bond with Danny. So I'm very proud of Deshaun for making those social moves early to get him to the end. And then in terms of the strategic game, I'm still very impressed with what he did at the merge, where he saw the votes coming his way with the Yase's ganging up on him, and he did a quick maneuver to Sydney to save himself, and that's what saved him that night. So I think Deshaun, if he gets there, without Ricard, he'll win. I think if Ricard's there, he loses. But the last thing I'll say, and then I'll pass it back to you, is I don't want to read the edit too much because I don't want to get spoiled, but we spent, Dylan, like 15 minutes in the last episode on what happened last week with, the narrative and the story and then the crying. And it was a lot of Deshaun centric, and Deshaun got like a million confessionals. Like Shan had the confessional lead for a long time. And just in one episode, Deshaun has almost caught her. He's like a few behind. In that moment, Dylan, I was saying to myself, either he wins the season or he loses tonight. Like it was such a huge visibility spike as well. So that's just my thoughts on why I still think Deshaun will win.
Yeah, I think that's something to consider. At the same time, I think that Deshaun is probably one of the best, speakers on the season. He lays everything out well. He speaks incredibly well, which again could be a major, huge plus for him. Obviously, at Final Tribal Council, that he could, speak so well. But maybe that could just be a reason why they're using his confessionals. They like him as a storyteller, but also could mean that he is the one who ends up winning the game or coming in second or something like that. But yeah, I do think that Deshaun has the second best chance, if I had to say, to win going into this final episode. And now let's get to Xander, who I believe, I don't know if you agree, but I believe that Xander has the third best odds to win at the moment. It could be debated whether it's Xander or Erica. We get to that later. I'm going to say Xander at the moment. I think that Xander has kind of played the game where if you're, making a line graph, it's kind of been like, and then, flatlined a little bit. And I don't necessarily think that's his fault. Which is the weird thing about Survivors. Like he was playing a phenomenal game, even early, obviously pre-merge. And like you said, pre-merge is probably not going to matter, but he plays a masterful game pre-merge. That's the point where he's left without a vote. He can't vote. And somehow he keeps surviving. He keeps surviving. He gets his vote back. And then, early in the post-merge, he is holding on to his advantages. He is holding on to, that extra vote, that idol, for so long. And now we're like, how did he not play the idol? How did he not play the idol? How is he getting this far with the idol? And now everyone's kind of looking at him like, well, he held on to all this and now he's not a threat anymore because he never used it in his favor. Obviously he used that extra vote for insurance, a couple episodes ago, but that, even though it's insurance, it's technically not used to get somebody out. So I think that people right now, we're looking at Xander as a huge threat early in this post-merge and now are like, well, he hasn't really done anything with what he's had. He's kind of just skating by now. So I think that they feel a little bit more comfortable keeping him until the end. Obviously, he's locked into Final Four because he has his idol still. He's going to play it at Final Five no matter what, unless obviously some insane thing happens that we don't see coming, idol nullifier or something like that. So Xander, we're going to call a lock for the Final Four as we see right now. And then, I would give Xander a pretty solid chance of either winning the final challenge or winning fire making. So I think that there's a pretty decent chance Xander sits at Final 3. And, the only thing, I saw some, you mentioned this. I was thinking it in the moment also. I've seen some, comparisons to a Xander and a Dean type thing here where, Dean from season 39 kind of, is that like guy who like, that so many fans love kind of throughout the season, but, maybe didn't make any huge moves, but played a pretty solid game. And then kind of has a season finale where all of a sudden he looks like he could win based on this huge final push. And that's something that I could kind of see Xander doing here. And that's kind of why I think he's third. I think not only does he have the idol to guarantee himself the Final Four, but he could theoretically win out challenges. If there's somebody who I would say to win out challenges, not named Ricard, it would be Xander. So I could see him, him taking out Ricard that way. Plus, if he, I think that while the jury may not respect him at the moment, And I think that's going to play a big role for him on why he probably won't win this game. I think that he could, make a pretty compelling pitch if he takes down Ricard of why he should win this game. He could, basically say, I survived with no vote early. I made enough bonds to get myself through. And then once I hit the pre-merge, I held on. I used an idol as leverage perfectly to make people not vote for me. And this is what I had to do in order to stay. I couldn't be aggressive with my idol and with my advantages, because if I was aggressive with those two advantages, then I would be the target every single week. So instead, I used it perfectly as leverage, laid low, hid behind shields, hid behind Ricard, made moves, in the behind the scenes. And now I'm sitting here today because I leveraged that perfectly. We have to keep in mind here that I believe that Tony has never used an idol properly. Is that true?
No, he has not.
He's not used an idol properly, right? But properly is subjective, because obviously Tony got through the game by using it as leverage. So yeah, he did use it properly. He just didn't use it to void any votes. So I think that Xander could make that argument, could make the Shields argument, and kind of pitch his game like that. I just don't know if he'll get the respect. But if I had to, predict a player to make a late game push, Xander, I think would be a pretty good candidate.
I like what you said about guaranteed Final Four. Anyway, Xander to me is the biggest question mark of this group, because some people I know what's going to happen with them, and Xander I'm just very up in the air, because yes, I do think Xander, especially again, he's 20 years old. He's played, I think, a good game, for, not only his age, but also I think, it's in terms of his archetype, the young, athletic guy. And yeah, I mean, in terms of the good, I think obviously he has made some connections with people, and he did kind of nullify Liana's knowledge as power advantage. So I think he did some good work there. My biggest thing, and obviously Xander, I think he's done a good job in terms of some other aspects of the game. I mean, the pre-merge, you can make an argument because, yeah, he did survive with no votes, but he did, kind of reveal a lot of information to Voce and Evie, and then he got caught in a lie with Tiffany, and Tiffany has never really believed him since, because he was lying to her. So yeah, no, Xander, I think, like you said, he's had an up and down game, and then lately he's just kind of flatlined, where it was a bit more volatile before. The reason why I think Xander, and this is where we'll have another disagreement, which I think is good, because I feel like when you watch these sports shows, it's better if people disagree, so you have more of a debate than just people saying, I agree with you all the time. Right. I do think Xander is the fourth in terms of chances to win. I think Erica would actually go above him. I just, unfortunately for him, he seems like a very nice guy, obviously. I just don't think he has the jury's respect. I just think, well, one, he's 20 years old, and I texted you this. The last winner that was around his age was Fabio and Sophie back in 21 and 23. He would be the youngest winner since them. And then you have people like Adam and Michelle, but yeah, they're 25, 26. They're a little bit older. He's 20 years old. He's not even out of college yet. And I just think that the jury, when you have a slightly older cast, they're not going to want to give Xander the money, which is unfortunate. We should always reward the best player no matter what. But I just think that's the reality of it. That's number one. And number two, not to read too much into exit interviews, but I'm going to be honest. Tiffany didn't seem like she liked Xander. I feel like Tiffany's not going to vote for Xander in the end. Evie might vote for Xander, but I think Evie's a little annoyed that, yeah, you saved your idol for yourself, but you could have kept me in the game as an ally. And he could have easily saved Evie that night and let Liana go a few weeks earlier. And he didn't save Evie, which I think Evie would be a little bit upset about. So Evie is a maybe. Tips a no. I don't think Liana votes for him. And if Liana doesn't, I don't think Shan does. They're a package deal. And Danny might respect him as a competitor, but Danny clearly seemed upset that Xander, didn't vote out Liana. Not Liana. He didn't vote out Ricard like he wanted him to. So the only votes I would give him is maybe Danny and Nasir. So I just don't think if he gets there, he wins. And I think from Danny's exit interview, people were like, why didn't you try to take out Xander? You guys could have put 2-2-2 instead of just voting for yourselves. Why not try to take a shot at Xander? And he was like, people want to go to the end with Xander. People they don't think they don't think he is a threat to win. Why else would you not take him out after holding on to his idol? Because I don't think they're going to respect his game and vote for him.
Yeah, I think Xander, while in theory he had the right idea about using Ricard as a shield, I think he missed his opportunity to potentially take control of the game. And I was kind of on the fence on whether he made the right move by using Ricard as a shield. But if he truthfully didn't really have respect from the other players out there in the jury, then it would have been the right move for him to, flip and blindside Ricard that night and just take his chances. Clearly, his plan is to try and figure out a way to get to the end with Erica and Heather at this point, and he thought that the best way to go was to try to beat Ricard in an immunity, use him as a shield as long as he could. Like he kind of probably saw one path for him to win, and that's go to the end with Erica and Heather. So he kind of went all in on trying to do that. Will it happen? We have to find out. But I think that's why he did not blindside Ricard. But since you think that Erica has a better chance than him, why don't you take the reins on discussing Erica's resume?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think if there's a clear 1 and 2 with Ricard is 1. I think a little bit down is Deshawn. Then there's a bigger drop with Erica and Xander. You can make an argument, obviously, for who's 3 and 4, and then Heather. But yeah, the reason why I give Erica a little bit more of a nod is I think we've really seen Erica evolve recently. Now, obviously, her pre-merge story was almost no story. She was barely shown. The only screen time she got was when Deshawn wanted to throw a challenge to get rid of her, and it failed. And I think that's a really interesting, maybe, conclusion to that arc to see how that ends. Maybe they both compete in fire. We don't know. But yeah, so you can make an argument that Erica can't win because she's been very invisible, and we haven't had a female winner since Sarah. And why would they give the first female winner in 7 seasons a very invisible edit? That's a fair point. The only counterpoint to that, I would say, is you've really seen Erica emerge ever since the Hourglass twist. She had that confessional about being a lamb and turning into a lion. And I mean, obviously she made the only move she could. I mean, no, everyone would have smashed that Hourglass, but she basically changed the game there. And from that point on, we've seen her get involved in these little strategic conversations. She and Heather kind of positioned themselves to be like the swing votes, not giving them like a ton of credit, but like Erica was always in a swing vote type of position. And I think we saw her. I mean, I think she effectively decided who left. I think Erica, in terms of being the cornerstone of strategy, she really decided who she could have easily got taken out Deshawn there. But I think because of the bond that she and Deshawn made, I think that's why she wanted to go with him. And I really feel like Erica could have decided who went home at the final 6 between Deshawn and Danny. And then obviously Erica could have flipped with Heather to take out Ricard if she wanted to, because even though Xander played his extra votes, if she and Heather flip, I mean, they could have changed the game there as well. So I feel like Erica can use the narrative of, I really started to make moves later in this game. And I think people actually would have a bit more respect for Erica than Xander. I think that's the only reason why I'm giving her a bit more of a nod there. Do you agree with any of that, or do you feel like it's just too little too late for her?
So I don't think that she can win unless things have to break her way. I think her only chance to win is if she goes with Xander and Heather, and then I think it would be a showdown between her and Xander. Here's the thing: is that in order for that to happen, obviously a lot has to go right. Second of all, I do think she gets there. I think she gets to the final 3. I think that there's a lot of things that have been kind of pointing her getting to the final 3. I think that, we kind of see her resume for a reason, and that's because we'll probably hear it at the pitch for her to win when she makes that pitch. I think that there's a reason we saw the moment of them trying to throw the challenge to get her out. I think it would make sense if she either gets further than one of them or both of them, I should say, Deshawn and Danny, or, simply gets there and is competing against Deshawn. Then I think it makes sense that why we saw that moment. I just feel like us, being highlighted, her strategy throughout this post merge is a major reason why I think she gets the final 3. And she has played a good game post merge for sure. I think she deserves credit there. But at the same time, this is kind of making me, and I'm in a very, very big minority on this, so bear with me here. But I've had a theory for a while. That Heather is not making the final 3, which I think most people just assume that she's a lock as a 0 vote final 3 person here. I don't think she's making it. And the simple reason for that is because even with the most purple final 3 people, the people who have received the least airtime that have got to the final 3, we kind of know their games, right? Think about, I don't know, anybody who's got to the final 3 and got no votes. Like we don't just see them get there without us knowing how they got there. We have not been given pretty much anything with Heather yet. Why? I don't know. But to me, that's a little bit bizarre at this point. And I think, we did see an uptick in her confessionals last week. I believe she had 3 or 4. So maybe they're just giving us like a late push for her, but I don't really know. I just have found it very, very odd that she's not gotten, any airtime. So for her to be sitting at the final 3, like, what are we going to be listening to her, where she's going to be pitching a game that we never saw? Like that's what I don't understand here. And I think that we kind of were given a clue that when they had that conversation about Erica being maybe worried to go with Heather, due to the fact that they could be looked at as playing the same game. So I think that maybe that gave us a slight storyline that Erica, whether it's, whether we think it's smart or not, we'll discuss that at the time. I think she could possibly be convinced to vote out Heather at the final 5, or maybe put her to fire in the final 4 if she has that power, simply because she does not want to be seen as having the same game as Heather and going, sitting next to Heather, but seeming like they played the same game. So I think that's interesting. Obviously, Erica would have to get other people to vote for Heather as well, which could be difficult. I don't really know. I don't know what that situation's like. At this point, final 5, people could just be like, well, Heather's going to take a spot for me. I might as well just vote her out. So, we've seen that happen. So, kind of getting into Heather, in terms of breaking down his final 5, we have not really seen her resume. And that's why I'm skeptical that she's going to even make it to the final 3. I think that normally, like I said, even with, let's say, a Natalie from season 22, where she gets no votes, goes to the end, we kind of saw that her moves were strictly to, be with Boston Rob. Like, we saw her story. We have not seen Heather's story throughout this game, really. And that's why I am skeptical she gets to the end.
Yeah, and I feel bad because obviously we just discussed the merits of the other final 5, and we said why they could win. And unfortunately, we're going to spend Heather's section talking about who could get there and why, and what about Heather, because she can't win. Heather has unfortunately a 0% chance of winning this game. And yeah, I think before we get back to Heather, Erica, you brought up a really good point that she said in the episode last week. I may not want to sit next to Heather because we may take votes from each other, because I think that's a fair point. When the jury sees 2 people playing a very similar game, like a Parvati and Russell, Elisa and Skupin, if you are very similar to someone else, you guys can kind of like bounce votes off each other when the third person will get the rest of the votes. So she brings up a very good point. Now, I think she has to go with Heather, because if she sits next to Ricard, I think she'll lose. I think she loses to Deshawn. So she really can only win against Heather and Xander. So I think she needs Heather there. But I will give Erica credit that she really needs to think about would Heather maybe take away one of my votes. I don't think so, though. Now, getting back to your other point about will Heather even get there, let's play out a scenario. So if Ricard loses final 5 immunity, he's gone, right? There's no shot they let Ricard slip through. Do you agree?
Unless he finds an idol, correct?
Unless he finds an idol. So if Ricard, okay, fine. I'll change the question. If Ricard is not immune, whether with immunity or he goes. You good?
Yeah. So sorry. You froze for a quick second. For me.
Yeah. No worries. I noticed a little bit of like desync, but keep going.
Yeah. So I would say if he is not immune, he's gone.
Okay.
But again, if he does win immunity, then it could get a little bit weird because Xander's safe, right? So now there's only 3 people that could theoretically be voted out. You would think the smart move would be to vote out Deshawn. I'm sure that's what Ricard would be thinking. I'm sure that's what Xander would be thinking. But I think that, maybe if Deshawn and maybe Erica says to herself, Deshawn has dug himself such a hole with what he did at Tribal Council that I would be willing to go with him to the end and prove why it is going to beat him. So maybe she says to herself, and maybe Deshawn says, anybody but me, I just need to get there at this point. So now they just throw the easy vote on Heather. I don't know how this would happen. It would have, I'm still trying to figure it out. But it's, look, regardless of whether I'm wrong or right, Survivor did something wrong. If she gets to the final 3, Heather, then Survivor did her wrong, because if you get to the final 3, no matter how you do it, you deserve more airtime. Simple as that.
I mean, I feel like, yeah, you should get more airtime because we've seen a lot of losing finalists like an Angelina or like a Nora get a lot of screen time and they don't get any votes. So I do agree with your point. I would say, though, you have someone like a Troyzan in Game Changers where obviously Troyzan still got more confessionals than Heather. I mean, Troyzan was pretty invisible, and the jury said to his face, like, look, we're going to talk to Sarah and Brad. We're not going to talk to you. And he's even like, I know you're not going to vote for me, but let me just say that I'm very thankful for this journey. So I don't think it's impossible that Heather does get there with having, no airtime. And I just feel like you bring up a good point where, yeah, you may want to get rid of her because she's taking one of the spots, or Erica doesn't want to be compared to her. I just feel like the window is gone. If you want to get rid of somebody that can take one of your spots, you take someone out like Abby Maria at the final 7 at Cambodia, or Sari takes out Courtney at the final 6 in Panama. Now that we're at the final 5, everyone there is like, Heather can't win. We have to go with her. The only way they don't say that is like, she's taking up one of our spots. And going back to my other point, Xander might be a GOAT that we can all beat Xander. That's the only way I see them take out her. So I feel like if Ricard doesn't have immunity in any way, he goes. If Ricard has immunity in some way, and then he and Xander are safe, I do think Deshawn could go, but I still feel like Deshawn is my winner pick at this point. So then I would. That's tough. I don't know.
See, that's what I'm saying is, like, theoretically there is a way that this could happen where Heather is
it could
Heather's
one
of 3 options to go. I think that it would probably come with it would strictly be if Erica wants to do it, and if she thinks that her big move in this game or one of her big moves is to separate herself from Heather, and that's just something she has to do, then she's gonna probably go all out to do it. And I think that it's a possibility. So I just wanted to throw that idea out there.
Yeah, so then that would mean then if she then says, I want to get rid of Heather to not only differentiate myself, but also to clear up a spot for me, then she would want to go with the people have been calling them the chicken and veggie alliance, the one that won the reward of Deshawn, Xander, and Erica. That must be her final 3 then, because I guess in your point, she thinks Deshawn kind of burned the jury and also was just sloppy in some regards, so she wants to go against him. And if Xander is the GOAT that he sounds like, then she wants to go against him, because obviously she's not taking Ricard to the end. So that's probably her final 3, unless she really says, Heather's not going to get any votes. So
that's actually a good point that I didn't think, that I honestly didn't cross my mind that those 3 had a final 3 alliance, like in that reward, because like we may have been shown that for a reason. Like you know what I mean? Like that could end up being the final 3. And if it is, obviously Heather would have to go at one point. So again, this has just been my theory for a while. I just wanted to throw it out there because I think a lot of people are just assuming she's going to just skate right to the final 3, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right. That is it 100% guaranteed she makes the final 3? No, because the only 100% guarantee we have for the finale, Dylan, is that Xander makes it to final 4 because he has a title or he wins immunity. The only way that doesn't happen is if they introduce some stupid twist to make sure it doesn't happen, which I don't think they would do to Xander. So the only 100% guarantee is Xander makes final 4. Other than that, anything can happen. And I think you're right that people, if Xander is safe, Ricard's safe, and somehow Deshawn finds an idol, then obviously I think there's a clear shot that Heather goes and Erica says, okay, well, it's you or me, Heather, you got to go. So it's not impossible, but I also think it's pretty likely that Heather makes it there and she gets either the Troyzan or Monica treatment where people just say, like, you don't even deserve to be here. And then I feel bad, but like Heather, she tried to play the game. The only move we saw her make was when she tried to save Tiffany and it almost blew up in her face and she went home. So I do feel bad because I do think she does seem nice, but I mean, this is a 4-horse race at this point, and I'm really curious to see who's going to take it home because I can make a case for any of the 4 of them.
Yeah, I do agree. It should be interesting. Should be an interesting episode. Just want to remind everyone once again to like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe to this channel. Follow us at Soul Survivor Pod, Twitter, Instagram. Follow us and subscribe to Apple, Spotify, anywhere else you may listen. And also one thing that I would love people to do is comment on this video and let us know what players from season 41 that you may want us to have on the podcast or try to get on the podcast after the season, because I would love to speak to some of them and get their perspectives on what has gone on here. And yeah, anything else, Ryan, you got today before we...
I only have one more thing, and I was going to say this for the finale, but we might have too much to cover, and we don't want to have like a 2-hour podcast. If, in your opinion, if they never mentioned 26 days, would you have noticed? Because I was seeing this on Twitter and I want to get your perspective on this. To me, the game didn't feel like Like we were all so worried about 26 days is going to be a huge problem. If you didn't tell me, I wouldn't have noticed that much. The game felt like pretty fast paced, of course, because these are players that came to play hard. But I felt like it didn't impact the game that much. What do you think? Just a quick question.
Yeah. So okay, I actually heard an interesting theory. That it could affect possible jury relationships. So
Okay.
like for example, like Ricard doesn't only knew a lot of them for a short period of time, because they spent like I think like how many days were like 15 days were pre-merge, and then the rest was post-merge. So it's kind of been like almost like a or like 12 days maybe. So but it's almost been, I think, 12 days was pre-merge, and then post-merge has been since then. So it's kind of been like 10 and 10, and like they've kind of been doing like an immunity like every day. So like maybe he only knew
Tiffany.
He only knew like Tiffany for a short period of time. But again, like that could happen in any Survivor season, knowing somebody for a short time. So yeah, I saw some theories like jury relationships, it could play a role. But truthfully, if they never told me it was 26 days, I probably would not have noticed it was 26 days. So I think you make a good point.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he knew Tiffany for like only 2 or 3
Yeah.
days. But yeah, so yeah, I think the jury relationships is a good consideration, a good point for consideration. But I would say to my first point that I wish it was 39. I still wish it's 39. I hope it gets back there at some point, but I don't think it had a negative impact that we were all scared of. Like the game, you could have told me it was 39 and I would have believed you. And then Jeff says at the finale, "Hey, psych, it was actually 26." I feel like it didn't hurt the season. I feel like it made actually things a bit more exciting. I think the post-merge was very fun. I mean, obviously the pre-merge was it was fine, but we saw Ua a lot because they kept losing. But the post-merge, ever since the Sydney vote and then when Tiffany got blindsided, I feel like it's been a really fun ride since then.
Yeah, I think it's been a good post-merge as well. And yeah, I'm excited to see. Yeah, that's it. I'm excited to see how it ends up playing out. So, like always.
Yeah, like always. Looking forward to finale night on Wednesday. Always love a good finale week. Who will win Survivor 41? Other than that, grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.